Hi guys, my name is Chris, and today we're going to delve into a horrible case together. At around 11:15 a.m. on January 29, 2023, police from the Green Bay Department were called over to a duplex on the 1600 block of LK Lane, and what they found there was a deeply horrifying scene.
You think she's dead?
Yes. 100%.
When the call was made by a neighbor, they mentioned an injured person. But when first responders entered the scene, they found two women who had been stabbed several times in the face and neck with their lifeless bodies sprawled carelessly on the floor. These women were 58-year-old Rhonda Chegelski and 53-year-old Paula O'Connor. At the time when their bodies were discovered, nobody else was present at the residence, but the truth of the man responsible for these killings shocked the world.
I knew there was absolutely nothing that I could do to help these women.
Here's how this story unraveled. Chegelski and O'Connor had known each other for a long time. They worked together as hairstylists in a salon and could be considered best friends. When they were killed, both of them were together at Chegelski's house. But there was one man who was completely missing from the scene, 48-year-old Richard Wendell Sotka. He had recently moved in with Chegelski and had been dating her for some time now. But he was completely out of reach after the murders, which led to serious suspicions. The authorities went after him, and it turned out that he had fled the home right after the women were killed. He was arrested in Arkansas almost 10 hours after the bodies were discovered. From there, it didn't take long for the truth to come out. As soon as he was arrested, Sotka saw no point in trying to play cat and mouse, so he confessed to both of the killings. But what could have compelled this man to kill his girlfriend and the girl that she was friends with? The motive that he revealed after his confession is nothing short of baffling. Two stories emerged after his confession. The first was that he was at home with Chegelski and O'Connor, and all three of them had been drinking, enjoying their time together. But here's where the tide shifted. Allegedly, the two women kissed each other, and after seeing that, something snapped within Sotka. The other story claimed that Sotka had walked into the home, not knowing that O'Connor would be there. He discovered the two together in bed, which led him to brutally act out on his impulse. But in either case, one thing remains constant. He couldn't bear to witness his girlfriend getting intimate with another girl, so his reaction led him to stab both of these women repeatedly in the face and neck. It was reported that he used an 8-inch blade while he attacked both of the women, and as he realized what he had done, he ran away. Throughout his confession, he talked about being overwhelmed with humiliation and anger. He admitted that he lost control, but couldn't provide precise details of the events. But once he was in police custody, the complete reality of Sotka's situation came out, and let's just say he was a deeply troubled man. According to court records, Sotka was already in deep trouble in Oconto County before he even committed homicide. He had 3 open cases, and here's a breakdown of exactly what he was found guilty of. In July 2021, he was charged with 2 domestic abuse misdemeanors. Then, in December 2021, he landed himself a bail jumping charge. And just when you think it couldn't get any worse, they did. In January 2022, he was charged with stalking, a restraining order violation, disorderly conduct, and bail jumping once again. So at the time when he murdered Chegelski and O'Connor, he was out on bond. This was allowed for him only under the condition that he would submit to electronic monitoring. But even that couldn't hold him down. Police later found out that he'd somehow managed to cut off his monitoring device, after which he threw it in a ditch near Dupree. Now, if he thought that would make him impossible to find, he was gravely mistaken. The cops tracked him down to Arkansas using the OnStar system in his truck, where he was arrested. But the truth came out in segments, and what Sotka revealed next would brand him as one of the most shameless murderers out there. While he admitted to killing both of the women, there was a lot more he confessed to. Sotka was high on Adderall and drunk when he committed the murders. He was humiliated by what he saw, but that wasn't the complete reason. You see, because of his bond conditions, Cegelski no longer wanted to maintain a relationship with him. She wanted him gone, but he refused to back down and leave. Later, the authorities realized that he had had this pattern of committing crimes for decades. This happened when Satka confessed to a history of violence against women. He talked about an incident that happened 21 years ago when he was in a relationship with a woman and snapped similarly. He ended up hurting her and went to prison for it, but the details of how he hurt this woman are downright terrifying. He lost control and left the woman with a broken leg, fractured skull, and several of her teeth knocked out. At the time, in 2002, Satka pled guilty to battery. He was sent to jail for 5 years, with the next 5 years under supervision. But even after spending all that time in jail, Satka was unchanged.
21 years ago, I snapped in the same thing. Okay. And the stuff that happened with her, it's the same thing. I snapped, and I hurt her bad. And that...
Did that come back a little bit after a while? Are you remembering it more? Or?
No,
okay.
Not enough.
And because of Satka's wickedness, 2 innocent lives were lost. After their murders, a GoFundMe was set up for Cegelski and O'Connor's funeral costs, and their loved ones recalled just how lively they used to be. They were the life of every party. Cegelski was survived by her 4 children, her mother, and her grandchildren. On the other hand, O'Connor also had several grandchildren whom she loved visiting. The only way their loved ones could see justice being served was if Satka ended up behind bars. As the trial began, the full extent of Satka's deeply disturbing nature finally came out. In March of 2024, a 4-day trial began. Satka was facing a slew of felonies, including 2 counts of first-degree intentional homicide for the deaths of Cegelski and O'Connor. Now, remember how Satka confessed to snapping with a woman he had dated over 20 years ago? Well, he served time in prison for that in Marinette County, and the victim came out and took the stand to testify against Satka. The victim recalled how she was out with Satka at a bar, and they had had a few drinks. But things took a disturbing turn when they got back home. She told the jury that while she was drinking from a glass of water, Satka knocked it over and it ended up busting out one of her teeth. But that's not even the worst part. The next thing she knew, she was on the ground, with Satka shoving her around, and then everything went black. She woke up later in the bathtub. The water was running, and she had a face full of bruises and a shattered ankle. Luckily, she managed to escape when Satka took off. When the cops showed up, they saw the aftermath of the brutal attack. One officer described her injuries, saying she was a mess. She had a black eye and blood, and was in shock over what had been done to her. It was clear she'd been through hell. After the testimony, the jury heard from Satka, and then sat through over an hour of Satka's interview with the police. All the cards were stacked against Satka, but his lawyer still had his hopes high. The attorney, Kirk Obear, hoped that the jury might go for a lesser charge of first-degree reckless homicide instead of the more severe first-degree intentional homicide. He mentioned how Satka was deeply torn up about the entire ordeal and even broke down in tears during the trial, questioning how everything went so wrong.
I'm sure Richard had a guilty conscience. There's no doubt about that. You saw it. You heard his own words in the video where he says, "Give me 2 life sentences." He said that. The evidence here probably does very strongly support a reckless homicide.
To Obear, this was a sign that Satka had remorse for what he had done. He was struggling with what had happened, but this didn't change a thing. When the verdict was in, things finally became clear. On March 11, it only took the jury in Brown County about an hour to come to a decision. Satka was found guilty on 2 counts of first-degree intentional homicide with the use of a dangerous weapon and 6 other charges.
As to the offense of first-degree intentional homicide, domestic abuse assessments of Rhonda Cegelski, we, the jury, find the defendant, Richard Wendell Satka, guilty. As to the offense of first-degree intentional homicide of Paula O'Connor, as charged in count 2 of the information, we, the jury, find the defendant, Richard Wendell Satka, guilty.
These additional charges included 3 counts of felony bail jumping, 1 count of criminal property damage, and 2 counts of misdemeanor bail jumping. At this point, Satka is facing 2 life sentences, but Judge Bowe might set a date for Satka to ask for parole. On the other hand, the judge could also decide that Satka will never be eligible for release. Either way, Satka ended up with the harshest possible sentence and might spend the rest of his years in jail. Do you think his sentence was adequate? Let us know in the comments, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more.